Hello, welcome to Poetic Techniques number 2. This is where we get a little more complicated and we start looking at a few more technical techniques. We're going to look at repetition, alliteration, assonance, onomatopoeia, and enjambment. Let's go. Repetition. This is the use of the same word or phrase several times in one phrase, paragraph, or in the whole text. It's normally used to accentuate whatever word or action is being repeated. So as an example, quick, quick, underlines that the command is pretty urgent. Obviously, if someone's saying quick, 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 they really want you to hurry. So it's underscoring that, it's underlining that. So here's an extract from a poem called I'm Nobody, Who Are You? By Emily Dickinson. I'm nobody, who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us, don't tell. They'd banish us, you know. She's repeated nobody to, number one, create an association with the person that she's talking about. So I'm nobody, who are you? Are you nobody too? So it's connection between me and you. And it's also reinforcing that theme of anonymity that the poem is exploring. So repetition can be used to reinforce, but it's also creating a connection here, which is a little bit different. What about this one from Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner? I looked upon the rotting sea and drew my eyes away. I looked upon the rotting deck, and there the dead men lay. So we've got this I looked upon the rotting that's being repeated. It's this impression of, I looked here, I looked here, I looked here. It's building intensity, and it's building the idea of being overwhelmed by this rotting sight that he's having.
Nice day today. I think I might, was that Alan? Alan! Al! Alan! I don't think you can hear me, you know. No. Alan! 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 Al! Alan! 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 Oh, so that's not Alan.
Alliteration is the repetition of starting sounds in two or more adjacent words. Adjacent means next to each other or very close together. Now, Tolkien actually said that alliteration doesn't depend on letters, it depends on sounds. So the phrase know nothing is alliterative, but climate change is not. So even though letters, the sound is the same, no, no, but these both start with C, but climate and change don't alliterate. So you're looking at sounds, not letters. We can see alliteration often in the names of companies and products. It helps us to remember them. So Coca-Cola, American Apparel, PayPal, Krispy Kreme. This alliteration, now you probably want a Krispy Kreme, don't you? This alliteration is repeating the sounds, and it helps it make it a bit more catchy. What about this? The snake slithered silently. Well, this is kind of emphasizing it's alliterating on the S sound, and it reminds us of a snake or something slithering. It's that S kind of noise. Babbling brook. Well, the alliterative sound here is B, and that bubble, that kind of sound. It's like a bubbling river. So it's helping to bring that image into our head. We can hear that sound. Alliteration is really good for sound, creating the sound really subtly of something in the story. I just alliterated a whole lot in that sentence. Or the fire flickered. It brings to mind the soft sound of flames, that kind of sound that's repeating. So if you're talking about alliteration, pay attention to the sound repeated, because that gives an indication of the effect that it's going to have. Let's have a look at how much alliteration is in this next sentence. His soul swooned slowly as he heard the snow falling faintly through the universe, and faintly falling, like the descent of their last end, upon all the living and the dead. It's from The Dead by James Joyce. So much alliteration in here, but it's such a brilliant sentence, I think. The alliteration is underscoring the faint sound of snow falling through those S and F sounds, and the H's as well. And also that much alliteration, rather than feeling tacky, which sometimes too much alliteration can, it more gives it this feeling of literary weight. It's giving it a weighty kind of feeling and importance to it. Like what's being written is really profound.
Alan! Oh, so that's not Alan. Steve, Steve. Steve!
What about assonance? Well, that's the repetition of vowel sounds to create internal rhymes within phrases or sentences. So, alliteration is the repetition of starting sounds. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds inside inside a word. For example, I must confess that in my quest I felt depressed and restless, has this assonance in the E, air kind of sound that repeats throughout that sentence up here. What about this one? Poetry is old, ancient, goes back far. It is among the oldest of living things. So old it is that no man knows how and why the first poems came. This is from Early Moon by Carl Sandburg, and have a look at the long vowel O when it happens, that poetry goes, so, no. It's emphasizing this old and mysterious kind of feeling. It's slowing down the pace of the passage, and it tends to sound grave and serious. What about this one? And stepping softly with her air of blooded ruin about the glade in a frail agony of grace, she trailed her rags through dust and ashes, circling the dead fire, the charred billets and chalk bones, the little calcined rib cage. The assonance here with that extended A sound again slows the passage down and creates a very serious kind of impression of this particular passage. Same here. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight. Again, that assonance, particularly in those longer A and I sounds, creates the very serious, very somber, kind of profound mood. So that's often assonance with longer sounds. I think it's making it very profound.
Oh, no, that's not Steve. That is Alan. Alan! Alan! Al! Alan! 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 Did someone just say my name? Hey! 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 You say Alan?
Onomatopoeia creates a sound effect that mimics the thing described. Bang, crash, clap, those kinds of things are onomatopoeia. And it makes the description more expressive and interesting, and often gives us particularly sound that really strengthens sound in our heads. For example, the gushing stream flows in the forest is a much more meaningful description than just the stream flows in the forest, because that word gushing helps you to hear that onomatopoeic sound, and it makes the expression much more effective. So here's a quote. The moan of doves in immemorial elms and murmuring of innumerable bees, from an old poem, Come Down, O Maid by Lord Tennyson. You hear that moan of doves, but the onomatopoeia is with doves moaning. It gives you almost kind of a sadder, more somber sound, because the doves aren't, bubbling or anything, they're moaning. And murmuring of innumerable bees. Again, you can hear that kind of sound that bees make coming out through that particular quote. What about this? He saw nothing and heard nothing, but he could feel his heart pounding, and then he heard the clack on stone and the leaping, dropping clicks of a small rock falling. Kind of a tense moment, and that clack and click, you hear those sounds as you read through that particular passage. Enjambment. Okay, in poetry this means moving from one line to another without a punctuation mark at the end of the line. So it helps to achieve a fast pace or a rhythm, creates a sense of urgency, and it helps readers continue thinking about the idea that expressed in one line and that continues through the next. So it's a continuation of a particular idea. So we can see it very much in operation here in this particular poem. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Each one of these words is enjambed onto the next line, so it's continuing the idea. This one here and the one at the end aren't, because that's where there's punctuation, but up here there's no punctuation in these ones that are circled red. So we call that enjambment, and it creates kind of a sense of urgency and intensity in this particular piece. And this one, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases, it will never pass into nothingness, but will keep a bower quiet for us, and a sleep full of sweet dreams and health and quiet breathing. So most of these lines again are enjambed here, 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 and here. And the first and last lines aren't, so they kind of have a slower pace here, and particularly breathing kind of rounds things off. But these four in the middle keeps that pace running. It keeps urgency up, and it also continues an action often into the next line. So it's creating a sense of moving forward and of progression in this particular poem. So those are 5 techniques. Hopefully you've been able to grasp what those are, and move on now into the books and have a look at what you're doing.